My children took $30 million. I got a dusty envelope. What I found inside changed everything. By Lilli Parker, 66 years old. The day I lost $30 million, I did not scream. I did not faint. I did not even cry. I stood in my late husband's office, my fingers resting on the edge of his oak desk, while my children calmly divided up what they believed was their future. My financial advisor says it's smarter to liquidate part of the portfolio immediately, my son Michael said, scrolling through his phone. We'll reinvest, of course, my daughter Evelyn added smoothly. Dad would have wanted growth. Dad would have wanted growth. They said it so confidently. My name is Lilli Parker. I am 66 years old, and that afternoon I realized something heartbreaking. My children knew the value of money, but they had forgotten the value of sacrifice. And what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that their father had left behind something far greater than $30 million. He had left behind a test. And a dusty envelope. The life before the millions. When people hear $30 million, they imagine champagne, silk gowns and private jets. They don't imagine a young woman sitting on a cold garage floor at midnight, holding a flashlight while her husband soldered wires into a prototype. But that's where Parker Biotech began. Richard was brilliant, visionary, restless. I was practical, steady, relentless. We were 26 when he told me he wanted to quit his secure pharmaceutical job and change the way rare diseases are treated. I remember laughing. Then I remember mortgaging my mother's house so he could try. For years I worked double shifts as a nurse. I packed school lunches half asleep. I balanced checkbooks that barely balanced at all. There were nights we had exactly $43.17 in our account. But I believed in him. No one writes articles about the believing wife. No one interviews the woman who skipped new shoes for 10 years so her husband could chase a patent. But I was there. And I never complained. The illness. Richard's diagnosis came quietly. Pancreatic cancer. Aggressive. Unforgiving. He changed after that, not in love, never in love, but in urgency. He began meeting lawyers alone, making calls at night. I just want everything organized, he told me. I trusted him. After 40 years of marriage, trust becomes automatic, like breathing. I did not know he was preparing a lesson. The will. The reading of the will felt surreal. The room was heavy with polished wood and legal language. Michael wore a tailored suit. Evelyn held a leather portfolio. They looked like executives. I felt like a widow. Richard's attorney cleared his throat. The estate, once valued at over $120 million, had been divided. After taxes and philanthropy, my children would each receive $30 million in liquid assets and stock allocations. I would retain residence rights to our estate and receive a modest trust for living expenses. That was it. That was the moment something inside me quietly broke. Not because I wanted more, but because I felt reduced. Hadn't I been there from the beginning? Hadn't I stitched, sacrificed, steadied, soothed? I searched Michael's face for hesitation. Evelyn for discomfort. Instead, I saw calculation. Mom, this is good, Evelyn said gently. You don't need the stress of business decisions. Stress. As if I hadn't lived inside stress for 40 years. I smiled. Because dignity sometimes requires silence. The clearing. 3 weeks later, they returned with movers. Art vanished from the walls, rare bottles of wine disappeared into crates, documents were boxed, catalogued, labelled. I watched strangers wrap my memories in plastic. It's just logistics, Michael explained. We're consolidating assets. Consolidating. Such a clean word for dismantling. When the movers left, the office felt stripped. The air itself seemed thinner. That's when I saw it. Behind the bottom drawer of Richard's desk, wedged into the shadowed corner, was a dusty envelope. It had my name on it. In his handwriting. For Lilli, only if they forget. My heart began to pound. Forget what? Forget me. Forget him. Forget where they came from. I carried it upstairs like it might explode. The letter. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a folded letter and a small brass key. My dearest Lilli, if you are reading this, then our children have done exactly what I feared. They have remembered the fortune but forgotten the foundation. I needed to see their hearts clearly before I left this world. The will shows them what money looks like. The vault shows you what trust looks like. You are the vault's sole beneficiary. The future of Parker Biotech belongs to wisdom, not ambition. And you, my love, have always had more wisdom than I ever did. Forgive them if you can, guide them if you will. I pressed the paper to my chest and sobbed for the first time since his funeral. He had seen it. He had known. The vault. 2 days later I entered a discreet financial institution downtown. Marble floors, quiet voices, polished security. The clerk examined the key, verified my identity, and led me into a private room. A reinforced case sat before me. It required both the key and a numeric code. I tried our anniversary. No. His birthday. No. Then it hit me. The date our first treatment saved its first patient. I entered the numbers. Click. Inside were documents, share certificates, digital security credentials, ownership transfers. And then I saw it. Richard had transferred 52% controlling shares of Parker Biotech into a private holding entity solely under my name, years ago. Years. While I was cooking dinner, while I was believing I was just the supportive wife. He had ensured I would never be erased. The 30 million my children had divided. That was surface wealth. The company, its voting rights, its direction, its soul, belonged to me. My knees nearly gave out. He hadn't left me with less. He had left me with everything that mattered. The boardroom. When I called for a board meeting, Michael sounded impatient. We're discussing acquisition proposals next week, Mom. Yes, I replied calmly, we are. When they entered the room and saw me seated at the head of the table, their expressions shifted. Confusion. Then disbelief. I slid the documents forward. I am majority shareholder, I said quietly, and I will not be approving any sale. Michael's face reddened. That's impossible. It's legal, the company attorney confirmed. Evelyn's voice cracked. Why would Dad do this? I held her gaze. Because he believed in stewardship. Silence filled the room. You were going to sell, I continued. To the highest bidder. Do you know what happens after that? Research budgets cut, drug prices raised. Accessibility reduced. Michael slammed his hand on the table. It's business. No, I said, my voice shaking with controlled emotion. It's lives. For the first time they looked unsure. For the first time they saw me not as a dependent widow, but as the foundation they had overlooked. The hard choice. I could have removed them. Stripped their titles. Made an example of them. Instead, I remembered Richard's words. Forgive them if you can. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength restrained. I will remain majority shareholder, I said, but you will remain executives if you are willing to learn what this company truly stands for. I outlined new conditions. 40% increase in rare disease research funding. A foundation for families who cannot afford treatment. Executive bonuses tied to patient outcomes, not just profit. Quarterly lab visits required for leadership. Michael looked furious. Evelyn looked ashamed. Do you think we're greedy? She whispered. I swallowed hard. I think you're afraid of losing what you didn't build. That was the truth. And it hurt all of us. The slow healing. Change did not happen overnight. There were tense meetings, sharp disagreements, long silences at family dinners. But something shifted. Michael began spending time in research labs again. He asked questions about clinical trials instead of stock trends. Evelyn started meeting patients. One afternoon, she came home from the hospital wing with swollen eyes. "I met a mother," she said quietly. "She sold her car for her son's medication." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. 1 year later, a year after the envelope, we gathered again in Richard's old office. This time it wasn't for division. It was for announcement. Parker Biotech had just launched a global initiative, providing subsidized treatment in 12 countries. Michael cleared his throat. "Mom," he said, voice unsteady, "we were wrong." Evelyn nodded, tears in her eyes. "We forgot where we came from." I felt something inside me finally release. Not victory. Not triumph. Relief. They hadn't just inherited money. They had inherited perspective. What the dusty envelope really held. People assume the envelope changed everything because of the shares. But the truth is deeper. It changed everything because it reminded me who I was. At 66 years old, I discovered that invisibility is often self-accepted. I had allowed myself to fade into the background of our success story. Richard refused to let that be my ending. The dusty envelope was not about control. It was about recognition. It forced my children to confront their entitlement. And it forced me to reclaim my voice. The moral: wealth without wisdom is dangerous. Inheritance without humility is hollow. And love, real love, sometimes teaches through discomfort. If you are underestimated, do not shrink. If you are overlooked, do not disappear. And if life hands you a dusty envelope when everyone else receives millions, open it. Because sometimes the smallest package contains not money, but power. Today, when my children introduce me at corporate events, they say, "This is our mother, Lilli Parker, 66 years old, the co-founder of Parker Biotech." Not widow. Not beneficiary. Co-founder. That is worth more than $30 million. And every now and then, when I sit at Richard's desk and run my fingers across its polished surface, I whisper, "You knew I would rise." And I did.